Todd Viney has seen it all at Melbourne during the past 30 years. Everything except a Demons premiership. Maybe his son Jack can complete the dream. Welcome, Todd.
Thanks, Michael.
It's been an eventful journey, hasn't it? Lots of highs, but an extraordinary amount of sadness too.
It certainly has been, particularly the last, probably 10 years.
Yeah. I most recently, when I saw you, it was speaking at Robert Flower's funeral. You spoke beautifully. I mean, you spoke because you know him so well, and it was just such an emotional outpouring. But Robert was a pivotal person in your life, wasn't he?
He was, absolutely. And, I'd known about that speech for a period of time, and I'd wrote copious amounts of notes. And just when I was trying to almost rehearse what I was going to say, I just kept on getting more and more confused. So I just broke it down to, well, what do you simply want to say? And I just wanted to say that he was special, that he's as a person, he was special, and he really did take me under his wing from a very early stage when I came to Melbourne, and gave me a great role model. Coming to an AFL environment, or VFL environment at the time, seeing all the trappings that go along with being an AFL football player, he certainly taught me the right way of going about it, respecting the opportunity that you had, respecting the supporters and always having time for people. He was very generous, very modest. So I learned some great lessons in life through Robbie, and we became great mates.
Go back to the start, the first time that you met the great Tulip. Melbourne and Essendon are vying for your services. You're a star in Adelaide at Sturt. You come to Melbourne and R. Flower's there at the airport to greet you.
Yeah, look, I couldn't believe it. The Melbourne Footy Club had organised for me to come over and spend some time at the club to try and convince me that they were the club to come to. And, I was really surprised when Robert Flower, the captain of the club and legend of the game, had picked me up with his young son Brad in the back seat, and took me home all the way to Croydon, non-stop talk the whole way. It was a fair trip from Essendon out to Croydon South, I think it was. The next morning I got up for breakfast, and as I'm sitting having my cornflakes, Robbie comes out and he's got this khaki safari suit with his big glasses on, and I remember turning and looking at him thinking, what the hell have we got here?
This is the best player in the VFL.
The best player in the VFL, and, it was all about practical jokes. He set it up beautifully, and the expression on my face was told the story, I reckon.
Because you were a kid, you were like 18 or something, weren't you?
Yeah, at the time I would have been 19 years of age, and I remember going down into his little man cave. He's had this fantastic man cave with a pool table and pinball machines and all these jumpers of the Vic State of Origin teams on the wall, and he was everything that I wanted to be. I'd come with my eyes wide open, and you'd have the BMW, you had the tennis court, you had the swimming pool, and you had this man cave, and he was everything that I wanted to become.
Todd, do you ever have time to reflect on the massive losses that have occurred at your football club over the last 15 years? I'll give you the names. You know them. I mean, we talked about Robbie, Jimmy Steins, Sean White, Dean Bailey, Troy Broadbridge, and now the terrible illness for Neil Danaher.
Yeah. I
mean, it's an amazing sequence, isn't it?
It is, and it's hard to put into perspective, really. I mean, I'm nearly 50, and as you get older, these things tend to happen. But to have that concentration of players I played with, respected, being so close to, and see those boys pass on, it gives a real reality check on your life and what's important, and it's scary, really.
Well, several of them are your teammates.
Yeah.
Now you're the father of a Melbourne player. There must be a peculiar set of circumstances where you have to deal with these blokes, not about their fitness or about their form, but about life itself.
Yeah, I think in the 5 years I've been back at the club, there's been lots of things thrown at the club, and we talk about mental resilience being so important. Well, certainly from our young guys' point of view, that they've lost Captain Robbie Flower and Sean White and Jimmy Steins, seen Dean Bailey pass. So they've been hit with some things they've had to jump, hurdles to jump.
Let's talk about Todd Viney, the footballer. Now, you won't take offence if I say you're probably not going to be in the skills book in terms of your marking or your kicking, but I can genuinely say, as a Melbourne supporter, that we love you in that footy team, and the team was so much better when you were playing. I mean, you were a very aggressive physical player, weren't you?
Yeah, I think that was definitely my strength. It was probably the competitiveness, probably coming from a slightly different pathway to a lot of the players. My skill level wasn't as fine-tuned as some, but my competitiveness, I think, was enabled me to play the games that I played and get to the position at the footy club that I got to. It wasn't sort of through the high marks, that's for sure.
But in the period, do you think that the fact that you were concentrated on tennis, say from I think 13 to 18, almost exclusively, do you think that inhibited your development?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind. You know, I gave up footy first year high school, so I was 13 years of age, gave it up to concentrate on tennis. So, you know, we talk about the 10,000 hours. Well, my 10,000 hours didn't really kick in till by the time I got to Melbourne. I played 2 years at Sturt in Adelaide and then came to Melbourne. You know, you had to make the most of what you had, and that was my competitiveness and will to win, I reckon.
What ended the tennis dream for you?
After going away overseas every year from the age of 13, those trips got longer and longer. I was spending more time away from my family. It was the grind of the sport that got to me, and if you're not passionate about what you're doing, then you're ultimately not going to reach the top. And I had a bad loss and I said, well, if I can't beat this guy, he's loving what he's doing, I'm begrudging being away and travelling, give it up if you're not passionate about what you're doing. So I made the phone call to my dad and mum, who had invested a lot of money because they were pretty blue collar and spent a lot of money over the years getting me to where I was at. And so I'm coming home, and Dad said, well, if you're going to come home and get a real job. So I came home.
I became a footballer.
And I set some goals down, and I wanted to give myself 2 years to play football for the Sturt Footy Club, and wrote out I had to get stronger and fitter, and that was the start of the journey. And flew back from Geneva, landed in Adelaide on a Friday morning, about a 7 o'clock flight. By lunchtime, the Sturt Footy Club had heard that I was coming back, and I was sort of captain of their under 13 mini league teams or little league teams. So they signed me up. They had 6 games to go for the under 19 season. They took me down to the coach, Colin Casey, who was a great ex-player of Sturt, was coached under 19s. He owned a sports store, got me some boots, took me to the Unley Oval. By 1 o'clock, I'm having a kick of the footy with him. And I played under 19s the next day. I turned up, didn't know a soul. They played me at full forward. And the kids
I wouldn't have played you at full forward.
No, but had an impact, and played the rest of the under 19 season. Won the premiership. That was my last premiership. And then all of a sudden I was playing senior football.
Now, this famous win over Boris Becker, Todd.
I knew this was going to come.
I happen to know that this is not correct, but you fueled this fantasy, did you not?
Well, I sort of didn't knock it on the head, put it that way.
So let's set the scene. Lou Richards is interviewing you when you first arrived in Melbourne?
Yeah, I was a greenhorn, just arrived in Melbourne. Lou Richards, I think, had heard some commentary from my SANFL days where they'd said that I'd played tennis, come from a background. I'd actually played Stefan Edberg in doubles in my first trip overseas. And somehow by the time Lou got it, you know, I'd beaten Boris Becker. And he said, and this is the boy that's beaten Boris Becker. And I just froze and went along with it. And before you know it, I'm being asked by the Herald Sun, your old mob, to have a photo with a cardboard cutout of Boris Becker.
The bloke you'd never met.
Correct.
Todd, at the end of 1985, Melbourne says, we want you to play with us. We want you to introduce you to the club. Come to Hawaii with us on a end-of-season trip, correct?
Correct. We went away and spent some time with the players, got to know them. First day at the airport, I was on the plane actually, and I was sitting next to one of the players. I remain nameless, but he said, any other clubs speaking to you? I said, yeah, I've spoken to Essendon. He goes, well, what the hell are you doing on this plane?
Really? I know why you'll remain nameless.
Yeah.
Was Brass there then?
Yeah, Brass was still the coach. I think Swooper started 1986. So got to meet Ron Brassey for the first time, and I remember sitting on the front beach, Waikiki, playing some chess with Brass, the master tactician, the master coach. You know, you have to pinch yourself now that you were doing that. And he said, I hear you've got a bit of talent, son, and I don't give a stuff about your talent. I'll respect what you do with it. So another really valuable lesson early on. Took me a couple of years to really wake up to that.
1987's your first year at Melbourne. Yeah. Went pretty well, didn't it? It was a good start. You played finals.
Yeah.
It looked like you were just launched on a career that was going to take you to wherever you wanted to go.
It was an unbelievable start. We hadn't played in finals for 23 years. You know, the decision to go to Melbourne was, you know, I could have potentially gone to Essendon, who had a very successful period of time. Melbourne had no success and was second bottom when I went there. But I just had a real feeling in my guts that Melbourne was the place to go. Probably due to Robbie Flower and the people that I'd met at the club. and went to Script 1987, first year. I think we had to win 7 or 8 of the last games of the year to play in the finals. We beat the Footscray at Footscray in the last game, which is in folklore with any Melbourne supporter. Robbie's last year of playing finals, it was all about giving Robbie Flower one last chance. Played in that game. We got to the first final against North Melbourne. I kicked the first goal in the first 20 seconds from the boundary. People say, how'd you do that? Well, I was actually trying to centre it, and it just went through back.
I can believe that.
And then we beat the Swans the next round, and both teams had given us a hiding throughout the year. Play Hawthorn in a prelim final out at VFL Park, the famous Jimmy Stein's incidents. But I remember walking out three-quarter time, we're up by 20-odd points, I think, thinking, how good's this? Your first year of footy, you're going to play in the grand final. And it went terribly pear-shaped in that last quarter. I couldn't get a kick. We made some mistakes, didn't make most of some opportunities. And of course, that last bit of play, the experience of Hawthorn stood out. Jimmy ran across the mark, gave Gary Buckenara, one of the best skilled players in the competition, a shot from about 40, and that was the end of that.
How deeply did that... You're only 20 then, it's your first year, and I suspect 20-year-olds and everything's flying for them. They think, well, if it doesn't happen this year, it'll happen next year. How deeply were you wounded after that preliminary final at Waverley?
Oh, yeah, no, deeply wounded, but it gave us real fire. Like, you often hear past players talk about losing a grand final, an opportunity, and how that gave you fire for the following year. I think from a holistic group point of view, that really gave us fire for the following year. 88, which we ended up making the grand final, but we didn't get the chocolates there either against Hawks.
Interesting year, 88. Melbourne makes you deputy vice-captain after 1 year, correct?
Yeah.
Yet we come to September, you have a poor semi-final and you're dropped.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, I had a terrible second year. My first year of footy was good. I was lucky enough to be appointed deputy vice-captain, but the old, I guess, in a nutshell, I got ahead of myself. I got my hair tipped, had the sports car.
Everyone did that.
Well, it's true, and was probably more interested about how many drink cards I could get at nightclubs rather than getting kicks on Saturday. It was a classic getting ahead of yourself. I had a poor year. I ended up getting some, what I probably believe now was osteitis pubis. Was in a bad way in the second part of the year, had no strength, no power, no fitness. And my form just got worse, got dropped quite rightly.
Did you deserve to be dropped?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, my form wasn't stacking up. And lucky enough that Stephen O'Dwyer got reported in the prelim final. And there was one spot up for grabs in the grand final. Certainly my form didn't warrant particularly me coming up, but I was a deputy vice-captain. I wrote a note to John Northey, who was the coach at the time, saying, give me the opportunity to prove myself. It was a really torrid week of training. I had to sort of fight against a couple of other players for the spot, a lot of one-on-one training. And I basically said that Dermot had been running off the side of the square and cleaning up blokes.
Yep.
And I thought, well, play me on the wing, and if he comes in, I'll have a crack at him. Probably similar to what happened a couple of years later with
Mark Yates.
Yates.
Yeah.
So that was probably showed you where the focus of our group was. We thought it was going to be a fight. Like most grand finals, it was always a fight at the start. It never eventuated. Dermot didn't come off. He was just concentrating on playing footy. I had a terrible grand final. Didn't get near it. And we lost by 96 points. Yeah. It was a nightmare. To this day, I've never seen it. Can't remember. I remember feeling sick in the race before the
literally
before the game.
In the stomach. Yeah.
Yeah, we just didn't handle it well as a group. The grand final parade, we got there way too early. We're just sitting around waiting. Hawthorn turned up just at the last minute because they'd been there, done that. They were just better prepared.
When you say you wrote a note to Swipper, to John Northey, literally a note or was it a letter?
No, a letter.
Yeah.
Yeah, a letter.
And you delivered it to him?
I think I might put it on his desk.
You didn't put it in the mail, did you?
No, I put it on the desk. I would have just sent him a text or something now. But no, I sent him a letter. Yeah, well, he did the job. He backed me in, I guess, from being the leadership group. He gave me the opportunity and probably, in hindsight, didn't hold my end of the bargain up.
So there was to be no premiership at Melbourne for you, was there? I mean, even the start, you've had a very good start, 3 finals the first year and then a grand final, but no flag.
No, we were around the mark for about 7 years with Swooper. We played some really good football, some finals football. He got the absolute most out of the group. We were really hard to play against, really competitive. Had some junkyard dogs in the team with some highly skilled players, but we just couldn't get there in the end. But
what did you think you lacked?
As stupid as it sounds, a bit of luck. You know, we just
You believe in that? You believe that luck can determine a grand final?
I think so. You know, luck's being in the right place at the right time, and then having your best players available. We got hit with the injury stick a bit. You know, David Schwartz's story.
Yeah.
Stephen Tingay fell through a plate glass window.
Right,
Gary Lyon got struck down with a bad back problem. Glenn Lovett with his body issues. So we didn't have a lot of luck when we were probably in our prime. But I think we got the most out of our group.
You certainly did, didn't you? You were sort of almost a throwback. You played the footy like I remember it being played, say, 60s and 70s. Just see ball, attack it, take out whoever was in your path.
Yeah, look, I think I grew up being a mad footy person. I loved watching the finals. I loved the hardness of the game.
It always seemed instinctive to you that it wasn't a contrived way of playing football. That was natural.
No, it was just aggressive, competitive, hated losing. That's what I was.
You could be pretty fiery too, couldn't you?
Yeah, I did. I wasn't afraid of walking over the other side of the line occasionally, and people say, is that sportsmanship? Well, it probably wasn't, but I didn't care. It was about winning. And if I could hurt someone, I'd want to hurt them. And if that meant they were one down, that was an advantage to us.
You mentioned the luck factor and injuries to key players, and you mentioned David Schwartz, as rightly so. My view was that in the early 90s, 93, 94, when Swarter went down with his first big knee problem, that he was the equal of Wayne Carey. Do you agree with that?
Well, it's certainly a big call. I mean, Carey for me was probably the best player that I've seen.
And mine, yeah.
And but Schwartz certainly had all the attributes. You know, he was powerful. He was big. He was aggressive. He loved the big stage. You know, he could take a big mark. He was beautifully skilled either side. He was a goal kicker. One of those guys that naturally wants to kick a goal. He had a bit of rogue about him. You know, he was one of the lads. So he had that presence as well.
After the break, your time on the road with Mark Philippoussis. No flags at Melbourne, Todd, but you did. You were part of Premiership glory at Hawthorn as an assistant coach to Alistair Clarkson, 2008. Where does that sit? I mean, Melbourne's your home and where your heart is, but the Premiership came at another place.
Yeah, I would have loved the opportunity as a player. I mean, but that was my bag. You know, it wasn't to be. To get the opportunity to go to Hawthorn as an assistant coach with Clarko was something really exciting.
You played with Clarko at Melbourne, didn't you?
Played for a couple of years with Clarko, and we used to fight like hell when we played against him. So the opportunity to go to Hawthorn, great club, and start the rebuild with Clarko and Damien Hardwick and Ross Smith and Mark Evans and those guys was an opportunity that I took. And we recruited, Buddy, Ruffy, Jordan Lewis, to see Sam Mitchell and Luke Hodge really grow, and Chance Bateman, to be part of coaching that midfield group for a period of time for 4 years. And Salute was, looking back now, nearly probably my favourite football memory. And so to be part of that, the last day in September, full stadium, and to help mould and work with a heap of guys to win one, probably quicker than what everyone thought, was an exciting time for me and one of my fondest memories.
You had a assistant coaching role at Melbourne briefly, then Hawthorn, and then Adelaide.
Yeah.
But I keep getting this feel that you never wanted to be the senior coach. Is that true?
Yeah, well, certainly along the journey, once I started at Hawthorn, then I got, I left Hawthorn after the Premiership, after 4 years, to go to Adelaide.
With Neil Craig?
With Neil Craig.
Yeah.
But it was during that probably 2 years with Neil that I decided that I didn't really want to be a senior coach. I wanted to expand my horizons, have a bigger, more global view on football and football clubs. And that's when I decided to get out and do more of the list management strategy type.
Pre-season when you was the year 1996, you decided to take a position as Mark Philippoussis' coach and fitness manager, correct?
Yeah, correct. At the end of 95 season, we hadn't made the finals. Got a phone call from Brad Robinson, of his manager. He said, "Look, Mark's back. Would you work with Mark, lead him to the Australian Open?" And I was just about to go away on the football trip at the time, and I said, oh, I'm just about to go away. And he said, look, it's $2,000 a week. I thought, oh, well, that sounds all right. So I started working with him on that part-time basis.
You were in contract with the footy club at the time, weren't you?
Yeah, I was contract. It was the off-season, so, we had a period of time off. The club was aware that what I was doing. As it turned out, enjoyed the work. Mark had some really good results. They beat Pete Sampras at the Australian Open in the third round. Pete Sampras was the #1 player in the world. Mark was playing extremely well. After beating Sampras, went home, it was a night match. I got home very late after doing all the cool-down stuff, and the phone rang. It was a guy called Tom Ross, who was his worldwide manager, saying, look, we want you to go full-time with him. So this came from out of the blue. Can you come and see us at the Hilton Hotel? Sort of took me by surprise. I said, look, I'm actually vice-captain of the Melbourne Footy Club. I'm playing at the MCG across the road there, and in front of 100,000 people. It's a pretty big deal. I don't think I can do that. At the time, when I look back, I was 30 years of age. I thought, what am I going to do with life after footy? This was an opportunity that could be forever. Maybe there was something in there that was an untold part of my life, that I gave up tennis early days. It was an opportunity to see what it would have been like on the tour. Certainly from a financial sense, I was a well-paid player at Melbourne, but on about $120,000, $150,000. But the offer financially was a lot greater.
Like how much greater?
I think it was in like 200, about 200 plus. Plus it was all your expenses were paid. So we were going to be living in Florida in the American summer and then living in Monte Carlo for the European summer. So I decided to take it up.
But what you didn't know was that his real manager was his father, wasn't he?
Well, he was his father, he was his manager, he was his coach, and a lot of people warned me that Nick was going to be hard to work with, that he was very controlling. You wouldn't have your way, you'd be carrying the bags, all that sort of stuff. But we had a couple of little run-ins, little testers along the way in the Australian summer before he went away, and I felt like I had his respect and his trust. We went away though, and it soon went pear-shaped, where unfortunately he wanted to control everything. Mark did. He had some conversations with me that Mark was overweight, skin folds too high, not training hard enough. And I said, I don't think that's the case. But he just wanted someone to blame. In the back of my mind, I knew that I'm giving up a fair bit of my footy life to do it. And I wasn't prepared to sacrifice that and be told how to suck eggs.
I want to take you to 1991. You remember a game at the MCG against the West Coast Eagles? An encounter with Chris Lewis?
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, we had a real fierce rivalry with West Coast over a number of years. I think Chris and I came to some sort of scuffle, blew. I had him in a choker hold, headlock, and next thing I know, that my finger was in his mouth, and he bit it.
Could he have said that he bit your finger because you were about to choke him to death?
Yeah, no, quite possibly. I did have concerns.
Did you break the skin?
Yeah. I had concerns that my finger was in trouble for a period of time.
What does in trouble mean?
That it was going to be bitten off.
Really?
Yeah, it was a fair bite. And then the next day, that night, got treated, and this was early AIDS stuff. I went to the doctors the next morning. They said, we want you to have a blood test. I said, all right. So I went to the blood test, sitting in the surgery, and the Herald Sun's out. It's front page of the Herald Sun saying Viney to have AIDS test.
Oh, really? Was it?
So the connotation of how that could be at that stage, but that was early days, blood trend, saliva, but that's how it was reported. And I think, Mick Moldas pulled me up. I was doing a radio interview with Mick. I was doing a show with Neil Baum, and it was a pre-record, and Neil Baum said, oh, Mick, we've got Todd Viney, we're going to do a pre-record. And he said, oh, yeah, can I speak to Todd? And I said, yep. He goes, I've never forgiven you for what you did to Chris Lewis.
Did he?
So, I didn't have much control of what...
To which you said?
I said, well, what do you want me to do? I was the one that got bitten, and that was it, Mick. So I had no control over the papers. And
did you have any part in that AIDS scare being in the papers?
No, not at all. No. Don't know how that even got reported. They said, you're going for a blood test on the orders of the doctor, and I said, rightio. But I had no idea that was going to be reported like that.
Todd, when Dean Bartley got the sack, was it the right decision? 2011, Geelong have smashed Melbourne at Cardinia Park.
Yeah.
it seems retrospectively to be a huge moment in the recent history of the Melbourne Footy Club.
It was a big. Anytime you sack a coach, it's not ideal.
Was it the right decision?
I think we were a long way away from where we needed to go as a club, as a whole. You know, it was a very fractured club. When I got there, 2011. You know, I've never come across a more fractured football club.
Really? Tell me define what fractured means.
Well, I mean, it was hard for me early days to be able to feel it, but, you know, everyone was second-guessing everyone else. There was no trust that people were put in place to do their job and do it well. Every decision people made, people would come in and question it. So I didn't think we had any chance of success early days.
How difficult is it having a son play at your old footy club? You've got the father-son tension because you're so keen for him to do well, but the fact that you're an ex-player of the same footy club, is it difficult?
I don't find it difficult, and you know, you would have to ask Jack the same question, but we get asked this a bit. I think Jack's he's just a very driven individual. Like the fact that I played there, he's aware of that. He's starting to understand some of the history to that, but he's just that single-minded about becoming a player and becoming his own man that it doesn't worry him, I don't reckon.
You'd love the way he plays, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I do. I love the way he attacks the footy, and I love his passion for the game. I love how competitive he is. So yeah, I'm like any other father. I'm proud of the way he goes about it. There's
an excitement amongst the greater Melbourne group about that the direction's finally positive.
Yeah.
Are you optimistic about where the club's at?
Yeah, I am. I'm obviously conflicted here because I'm working there, but no, I'm really confident that we've got all the right people in the right place. We've got a plan. You know, I think it's been a long time coming. This has been the toughest 5 years of my football career, being back at the club. You know, there's been a lot of work that's gone into getting us to this point, but we've got really good people in all the right spots. There's a plan, and we're starting to execute it. We've got a long way to go. We need to keep adding talent. We need to keep coaching and developing our players better. But I think we're heading in the right direction.
Ruzi, just your impressions about Ruzi and the impact he's had on the footy club?
Oh, it's been enormous. And the biggest thing he's brought is just the confidence, you know, calmness. Don't get flustered. This is what we're doing. There's going to be noise. Put it to the side. Stick to the plan.
If I can dare to speak on behalf of the Melbourne fraternity, Todd, we love watching you play. I always thought the team was more likely to win when you were playing. You gave us a lot of thrills, and I'm glad you're still involved.
Oh, thanks, Mike.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for your time.